Definitely two buckets. I think they have to be very encouraged with the international cable momentum, particularly in India, and including Hotstar, their streaming business there. And then the studios, you just pointed out, had a really nice quarter with the success of Deadpool 2. Certainly a little counter to the usual Disney ethos, but that's a great franchise they're picking up there with the deal. And then on the Fox side, Fox News continues to show good numbers, better monetization on the advertising side, certainly on the affiliate fee growth. Broadcast was a little hamstrung by the World Cup cost, but 19% increase in retransmission receipts over the quarter. So it looks like it's a win for both sides of the equation.
Mm-hmm. What do you think ultimately happens with Sky, the product in Europe that both Comcast and 21st Century is trying to buy, so that way maybe Disney could eventually have it?
Well, I think Sky's a great asset. I think that at this level of bidding, Comcast, £14.75, basically that does allow for the synergy value. So it's a little bit of a vanity contest when bids get above, this level. I think Comcast probably has a little more experience in running that, manner of business than Disney does. But I think it's a great asset. I mean, you don't just have a presence in the UK. You're in Germany, Italy, even some nascent efforts in Spain and Switzerland. And there's a lot of original programming, Sky Originals on the scripted side, as well as sports and news, as you well know. I would slightly handicap Comcast as the favorite still. I think that there could be some horse trading, quid pro quos with respect to Hulu, the ownership there and programming from NBC that could entice, get a nice wrap around everything. Although they have to be very careful with the UK takeover laws in terms of not crossing any lines on the horse trading.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Hulu for a second. So when all is said and done, Disney ends up with this big chunk of Hulu. When you look at this earnings report last night, Lawson there, I mean, they already talked about how much they're spending on over the top here. And then Hulu is working at a loss here. I mean, they're going to have to absorb all that, right? There's a lot of cost to moving from Disney's previous strategy to now this, direct-to-consumer. How do you think that plays out? I mean, where do you end up thinking about Disney when you think about all they've got to invest in order to get to that final place?
Well, I think Disney, certainly when you look at the family, ambiance of the brand there and what they're doing there, and ESPN on a direct-to-consumer basis has a lot of promise. I think Hulu is a very distinct animal. I mean, clearly the losses are massive right now. It's not clear whether they've topped or not, but it's still formidable entrant, and I think having the consolidated ownership in Disney at least 60%, let's see if they take out Comcast, is probably a good thing in terms of getting a clearer strategic path moving forward.
And Matthew,
but there's a lot of work to be done.
Where do you think CBS and Viacom ultimately land in this whole mix?
I would say that certainly makes sense to get increased, scale, and some of the arguments that have been put out in terms of putting those two companies, together. We have, I would say, probably makes some sense. I mean, you could certainly argue that they're a little bit subscale.
And in terms of subscale or not subscale, where's Verizon land? I mean, if you really are starting to just think about all the different chess pieces in the game, Verizon doesn't have a content piece. Do they need a content piece? There's CBS and Viacom. Do they need to hook up with somebody? There's Discovery that's laying out there. I mean, sort of, if you were to sort of line them up, what are you expecting over the next, let's say, even 12 months?
I would say the only company that over a very long period of time has done a masterful job integrating content is Comcast of NBC Universal. I mean, Time Warner certainly had some issues in the day.
And you're not just saying that.
Exactly. I mean, trying to make you feel nice. I think Verizon and some of the other cable companies, for example, Charter, are very much sticking to the knitting on emphasizing their network business. And really, I think that content makes sense on a grand scale if you're really trying to compete with Netflix. But if you're just really trying to be a pipe and move toward 5G and really optimize your cable architecture, I'm not sure you need to buy content. And I think buying a smaller content asset, I mean, there aren't that many true elephants out there. I think the Fox assets were unique, and some of the notion everybody's going to scramble to acquire smaller content companies. I'm not sure that makes sense.
What happens now with Sinclair and Tribune? See that Tribune officially walking away now, just announcing.
Well, people were surprised with Ajit Pai's posture on that. I think certainly WGN in Chicago, there are some issues there in terms of selling that and basically retaining functional control. So I think it was maybe a little bit much, from a regulatory, vantage point. And I think this is more or less the outcome that everyone expected when it was referred to the administrative law judge.